Hi and welcome from Sinead and myself to the Eason Winter Must-Read List. Winter, I know, here we are. This is the third time that we've been doing. I think Sinead and I haven't seen each other for about 46 years at this point. But here we are, look, on Zoom, telling you all about the books that we think that you should be reading for winter 2020. There are 8 cracking books, and for the very first time, entirely not in a deliberate fashion, but nonetheless, it's the way it worked out, all 8 authors are Irish. Sinead, where are we going to start?
Yes, they are all Irish, and I have to say it's worked out really nicely. We are wearing black, which is not a sign of our mood. We just keep wearing black.
It's a very, 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 very dark blue, promise.
We promise to be very, very cheerful and great recommendations. Okay, so my first recommendation for the Eason Winter Must-Reads is Michael Harding, What is Beautiful in the Sky. Now, Michael is just, he's like the elder in your village, and this book is all about soothing commentary, and it's really about how, even though the world has gone crazy around us and we have no control over what's happening, that the important things in life are still there. And really it's about getting out in nature and looking up at the sky and appreciating the small things in life, because that's going to keep you sane. So really it's he has the most kind of disarming honesty, and he has great insight, and his writing is very soothing. It's like balm to the soul, and it's really just how you know, have hope in your heart and take time out to just sit and be in nature, and that will, you know, fill your well and just keep you nice and calm. And really it's just a very wise book with beautiful stories and musings on life. And I have to say, it was like somebody holding my hand and giving it a squeeze as I was reading this book. Perfect for these times. Just kick back, put your feet up and immerse yourself and listen to Michael's soothing and reassuring voice and words.
Yeah, I think this time around, all 8 of our books, all in one way or another, some way feed into that. I'm going to start with The Big Gun. The Big Gun for me is not just physically because of its size, but it's this one here. This is The Art of the Glimpse. The Art of the Glimpse is a short story collection. It is edited by the wonderful Sinead Gleeson. Sinead, you will know from Constellations, which has been one of our previous picks here some time back, but Sinead has also put together 2 collections of short stories, all by women. This is a collection of short stories featuring basically everybody. Joyce is here, Bean is here, Beckett is here, Sally Rooney is here, Donald Ryan is here, Kevin Barry, Anne Enright, and a ton of new writers that you may not necessarily have heard of before. The reason I chose this is not just because I love so many of the authors who are in this book, but there's always someone in your life who you know loves reading and you know loves books, and you can never think, well, what can I get them? What have they read? What exactly are they into? If they like beautiful writing and they read Irish writers in any way, shape or form, this is the book for them, primarily because you get 700 and odd pages of the absolute best of over a century and a half of Irish writing. The book, as well as that, attempts to almost rewrite the Irish canon as well. Certainly previous efforts in previous decades have lacked hugely in terms of diversity, in terms of representation of women, in terms of Ireland's travelling community, and in terms of new Irish. And Sinead in some way attempts to go to redress that in this book. It is absolutely beautiful, hefty as hell, and costs about half what you think it would. It's called The Art of the Glimpse, and it's a short story collection edited by Sinead Gleeson.
Yeah, and short stories I think are kind of perfect for the moment with people, you know, finding concentration difficult. So that's a gorgeous gift, actually. So my next book is Martina Cox, With Hope in Your Heart. So this book, I mean, we're talking about resilience at the moment. This book is all about resilience. So Martina Cox, you may remember hearing the story in 2008 of her husband, Sean Cox, who was a big Liverpool fan, and he went over to watch a match in Anfield. And in a second, their whole lives were changed and shattered. So on his way to the match, he was viciously attacked by a group of the opposition supporters, and he was left with a severe brain injury. So Martina walks us through the next 18 months of their life, right up to the present day. And really, this is about never giving up hope. This is about unbelievable resilience. This is about never taking no for an answer as she fights and fights and fights for the best care for her husband. And what's beautiful about this book as well is it's about 2 communities coming together, the Irish community and the community in Liverpool, and how they came together to help this family walk through this very, very difficult time in their life and to hold them up and support them. And the foreword is by Jurgen Klopp, and it's actually gorgeous, and I have to say it makes me like him even more. He's not just a wonderful football manager, but he's a lovely human being as well. And I suppose this is about, as I said, it's about love, it's about unconditional love, it's about a family dealing with the most difficult circumstances, but how they, again, find joy in the little things, and how her tenacity and her never give up attitude has helped keep her husband alive, and how he's recovering well. He'll never be quite the same again, but they have managed to find and create a good life for themselves. And the end of the book is how they just get him home before lockdown. So a really kind of beautiful book about resilience.
I think it's an absolutely extraordinary story, Sinead. You are 100% right. I want to be Jurgen Klopp when I grow up. I've said that for a very long time now, and I could not be more thrilled or proud of the role that the football club that I've followed my entire life plays in that story, in the Sean Cox story. It's a super read. I'm going to give you something wonderful, which is this. For the second time in a little over a year, Kevin Barry has something new out. This is not a novel. This is called That Old Country Music. It is a short story collection from Kevin Barry. Kevin Barry does two things immensely well. Writes novels and then writes short stories as well. And he's equally brilliant at both of them. This book is full of the characters that you might have encountered, not the same ones, but the same type from Kevin's previous short story collections. They're all people who live in mostly rural Ireland. They're in desperation. They may be new to the country. They may be looking for love. They may be abandoned by somebody else. There's one character who is seeking out the songs of an ancient, dying Sean-Nós singer. There's one character who's lost on the streets of a foreign, sun-blazed country. There's a famous poet who's losing his mind in a mental hospital in Ballinasloe in 1960. The very first story in it, I knew I was going to like this collection anyway. He was pushing against a very open door here. It's called The Coast of Leitrim, the very first story. And I had a little weep at the end of it, and I'm perfectly happy to say that. It is a beautiful, beautiful collection of short stories. It's also, again, we talk about short reads here on Must Reads quite a lot. It's a relatively short collection of short stories, but he is the most extraordinary living Irish writer, and I continue to say that, and I hope you take a punt on this. It's Kevin Barry's new book, and it is called, aptly, That Old Country Music.
Okay, so I'm sticking with football. This big football team, I didn't even realise. So my next one is Champagne Football by Mark Tighe and Paul Rowan, two journalists. Now, I'm a football fan, and my two boys play football, and I have to say I found this fascinating but also extremely dispiriting, because what the two journalists have done is expose the unbelievable mismanagement and shenanigans that went on in the Football Association of Ireland under the management of John Delaney. While the Football Association was absolutely dying on its feet, they were travelling around the world first class, drinking champagne and mismanaging funds and, you know, living the life of Champagne Charlies. And it's just shocking how John Delaney was allowed to get away with this, how he had the board of the FAI under his thumb. They were all yes men to him. How he ran the association like his own little fiefdom. It starts off with his 50th birthday, which was largely funded by the FAI, and it's just bottles of champagne and it's crazy excess. So it's shocking, it is dispiriting, but it is unbelievably good, and I couldn't put it down. And it will leave you a bit shocked, but also very, very relieved that he's finally gone, and that hopefully the right people are now in charge. So an absolutely cracking read by two wonderful journalists who have done an amazing job.
Okay, I've picked an autobiography this time around as well, and it's almost the entire flip side of the coin of the book Sinead has just picked, in that it is the book of the autobiography of former President Mary McAleese. The book is called Here's the Story. This is her memoir. Now, President McAleese's story starts off in the 1950s and 1960s in Ardoyne in Belfast, not the Ardoyne as many of us at the border would have called it when we were growing up, and she's very, very specific about that at the beginning of the book. The descriptions of her growing up on the streets of Belfast are exceptional, because this is in the decade and a half before the Troubles, pretty much. It talks about the nature of the relationships between both sides of the community, between businesses and people who lived next to each other and close to each other, how those things deteriorated and how she witnessed that happening as a young woman growing up in Belfast. It does later on hit all of the major high points that you want an autobiography to. It does talk about being a law professor in Dublin in her 20s. It talks about her part in the peace process, not always acknowledged at the time, but something that she can talk about now, right the way through to her being president for 14 years and culminating with the visit of Queen Elizabeth II to Ireland. She is a warm storyteller. I found myself laughing and giggling in this more than once. She does have a few giggles at the expense of her family and her husband in particular. So it's a warm, wonderful, accessible read full of things that you did not necessarily know about her, but also with a lot of the minute, wonderful detail of her career and her time as president, and those things that have happened since then and her clashes with the Catholic Church in the intervening years. And it's incredibly readable, incredibly illuminating. It's got warmth, it's got wit, it's got style as well. And it is Mary McAleese's autobiography. It's got a lovely picture of her on the front of it as well. It is called Here's the Story.
I absolutely loved that book as well. I particularly loved the chapters about Queen Elizabeth's visit. I mean, because it was such a momentous moment, and it's great to have little behind the scenes information about that. So my other pick for the winter list is Keelan Shanley. So Keelan Shanley's A Light That Never Goes Out. Keelan Shanley was somebody that both Rick and I knew. She was a great fan of books, and she was obviously she did the book awards and presented the book awards for many years. This is a very sad, it is a very sad book. I'm going to be honest with you. You will shed a tear, because Keelan wrote this book just before she died, like very, very shortly before she died. She wanted to leave behind something for her loved ones. It is an amazing book by an exceptional woman. There isn't an ounce of self-pity or regret in this book. It's phenomenal how she accepts her fate. And she goes back to the beginning, and she tells us all about her career, which was fairly remarkable actually. You know, she started off as an investigative journalist, and she ended up anchoring the 6 o'clock news. And so she goes through all her different parts of her life. She talks about getting married and having her children. What she does in the book is she makes it very clear that her career, while her career was very important to her, that there was much more to her, that she's, you know, a wife and a mom and a sister and a daughter and a friend. And it's just a really beautiful book by a remarkable person. And I think it is a gift that she has given to her family, as unfortunately her life was cut very short. So a gorgeous and very interesting, and as I say, not an ounce of self-pity. It's a beautiful, beautiful memoir.
Yeah, in recent times, Sinead and I always find ourselves with at least one book every season that both of us could have picked, and both of us usually have. A row is the strong word, but both of us had words over to which one of us was going to get to pick Keelan Shanley's book. And it is beautiful and extraordinary and full of things that certainly I didn't know about her as well. And it's an absolutely beautiful book. I'm going to finish with this. It's a book I was not expecting to pick. And when this book arrived in, I thought, oh, that could be interesting. Never for a moment would I have believed that I would have ended up picking it as the last of my 4 books for this season. It is The Dictionary of Hiberno-English. Now, the late Dr. Terence Patrick Nolan passed away in 2019. So this is the 3rd edition of a book that he originally brought out in 1998, and it's been updated ever since then. The book itself, however, has been out of print for almost a decade, and the foreword on this one is by Blind Boy. When I was a kid, I always felt slightly incredulous at the idea that we used the English language in a different way to the way the English did. And obviously, the moment you start digging down into that, you realize that the way we use certain words, phraseologies, that Hiberno-English is a thing. And I've been fascinated about it to an on and off degree throughout the course of my adult life. However, this book is just wonderful for, and everyone will know one person in their life, they're going to want to know a little bit more about, you know, what Ask Me Swiss means like if you're from Dublin, and you know if you're from Dublin, whether or not the American term so long comes from slán, there's discussion to be had in that. Why Kilkenny's hurling team are called the Cats. It has to do with bored Hessian soldiers in 1798. It's utterly fascinating. There's a ton of other things in this book. I could open a random page and you would come across something that you go, that's really interesting. I must find out a little bit more about that. It talks about our language. It talks about how we use it. It talks about Irish words that have found their way into English, and then those things that are hybrids as well. Either you're going to find this an utterly fascinating proposition, as I did. Maybe you think it might not necessarily be for you. It's utterly worth taking a punt on, and it's beautifully put together as well. Instead of, you know, one of those hundreds of diddly-eyed books that, you know, you might pass on to your American uncle or you might send to somebody as a present in another country, this is the one I think you should have a go at this Christmas, and it is beautifully put together. It's called The Dictionary of Hiberno-English, and it was edited by the late Dr. Terence Patrick Nolan. Blind Boy does the foreword on that.
There you have it, our 8 fantastic, in our opinion, choices for the Eason Winter Must Reads, and we are delighted that they are coincidentally all Irish. It couldn't be better timing. I think we all have a lot more time than we planned to read, so please buy books, buy Irish, and kick back, over the holidays and enjoy all these fantastic reads. We have something that's going to make you cry, it's going to make you laugh, that's going to make you go wow, and I think that's going to be like a big warm blanket of comfort. So happy reading, everyone.